So today in this session of the working group, we choose the theme of the dignity of man, which has a major role in the work of the general anthroposophical section at the Goetheanum. The dignity of man, of all human beings, is a major part in anthroposophy, but also in the development of the 20th century. Beyond all destructions, we see internationally, worldwide movements restoring, I would say, what we can call the dignity of human beings in the midst of destruction. And we held a conference at the Goetheanum intersection about this theme, and I think the records are still available on the homepage. And I want to focus now in my little presentation about dignity of birth and death. And this is strongly linked to the second panel of the foundation stone meditation, because the mystery of lung and heart is also a mystery of birth and death. I mean, this mystery of inspiring the air and expiring has to do with this overcoming death in every moment of life, since the beginning, which is an inspiration, and the end, which is an expiration. And in between, we have this middle, this balance. So the mystery of death and rebirth is taking place all the time in the middle of our own existence. And this is a wonderful signature of human beings, that they carry death and rebirth and resurrection, that these are not only single events, once upon a time, or just in coming into the earthly existence, being born and then going out at the end. No, it is a constant trait of being on earth, this dying and living, or this kind of resurrection. So in a way, it is fitting to this second day of the conference with this second panel. And we decided to change a little bit the lecture. So Constanza Kalix will lecture in the afternoon about the whole question of dignity of man, also from a philosophical, anthroposophical approach. But now I will start with these extremes. And maybe it's an introduction to say that on such a horrifying place as the concentration camp of Auschwitz-Birkenau, I once came across the story of a midwife, well known in Auschwitz and in Poland, but not so much in Germany and in other countries. The midwife Stanislawa Leszczyńska. She came as a prisoner to the camp, but also as a professional midwife. And what they started since she was there is to deliver children, because in a way there were quite a lot of pregnant women. They came in the state of pregnancies as prisoners to the camp, and a smaller amount they became pregnant in the camp, which was unconventional. But this is also part of the concentration camp stories, that almost all life events happen there. So against all rules. And we know that from Stanislas Leszczyńska, who came as a prisoner in April 1943 to the camp, and was liberated with the other ones in January 1945, that she delivered almost 3,000 babies, newborns, in the barracks. Some of them are still alive in our days. Most of them couldn't survive. But I want to mention it because what is described by the prisoners is that all these deliveries done by her, they kept the dignity of birth. So what they tried together, I mean, this happened in the barracks for the women, and in a way on a secret space, or they tried as far as they could to hide the situation, but the process of the delivery was full of human dignity. And even if the child died 2 days later, or the women died, because if the SS perceived the situation, they were both brought to the gas chamber. So, and some of the children, they try to hide these newborns. But it's interesting, it's not interesting, it is moving or shocking that in the midst of this genocidal 20th century, in the midst of such a place of dying and extreme murdering, there was such a person as this Stanislava Leszczyńska, and facing this and going on with what she believed is the dignity of man and the dignity of birth, the existence of mankind. And from an anthroposophical point of view, we can also ask if there was much support maybe for her to stand in this position. I mean, if we read in Steiner's leading thoughts that Michael has this concern for humanity, and Steiner describes this. Michael, since long times, always tried to make sure that the existence of mankind, sometimes in a cosmic corner, Steiner wrote, cosmic corner. I mean, this was no cosmic corner, a barracks corner in Auschwitz-Birkenau, but in a way there were forces of resistance. And I start with this extreme because in a way what we feel as doctors and other therapeutical active people, or just people witnessing our time, that the gates of human biographies, the gates of birth and death, there is really a fight. Lucifer Ahriman and other forces are really present at these gates. We have also the tendency of a lot of technical manipulations at these gates. If you talk about dignity of birth, when we held the conference at the Goetheanum, we had a guest speaker. She could only speak via Zoom on a big screen because it was too expensive, and she couldn't come from the favela Monte Azul in Sao Paulo and from this wonderful birth house they have there. And the astonishing thing is that in the midst of the favela, they established a house for natural birth with the full dignity of what is the event of birth. And it became so attractive in Brazil, this conditions, this atmosphere of the house, that a lot of people decided, a lot of mothers decided they want to deliver their child there, even if they are not at all belonging to the favela. Because there is a strong trade in high technological medicine, let's say the leading gynecological hospital in Brazil, in Sao Paulo, that there are more than 95% of all deliveries were to a predicted time with a cesarean section. So this aim to have, it is not the birth time determined by the child, but determined by the doctors in communication with the parents. So a wish date and then with cesarean section and anesthesia. And as they told me, a lot of women, they don't want to have this at the beginning of their pregnancy, but during the medical control system and the advising system, they were more or less, it was described to me in this way, pushed to this decision. Because from a technological point, from a point of administration, we want to have control in the society. So we want to have a fixed Easter date and not dependent on the rhythm of the cosmos. So we have many struggles in our society, formalistic, we can also say Ahrimanic elements of determination, and other dimensions, other laws or other impulses. So a lot of those women who come for getting their child there, or let's say parents, because hopefully it's a decision of the parents, not only of the mother alone, they decide to go there in the favela to get the child there. And so we had the guest speaker, and the good also of the conference was there was a Swiss foundation present, and they decided to support this house in Monte Azul, and they got quite a sum of money to go on, and they could, when we visited Monte Azul next time, they showed us what was possible by the conference at the Goetheanum indirectly. The Goetheanum had no money, but people were invited, and then they came, and this was a wonderful image for us, what the Goetheanum could also be, a place where such initiatives in the world have a chance to be presented. And others are there, and some of them have a relationship to a foundation, and then they could support. So very interesting if you consider the Goetheanum also as a kind of a heart organ. And the heart is always a mirror also what is going on in the circulation, what is going on in the body in itself. So back to the conference. The conference was dignity of birth and death. So we have a lot of manipulations at the beginning of life. I mean, these are not all negative manipulations. We know that how many children died in the past, how many mothers died. So we can also see it is an enormous progress of the state of art in medicine, but always this seduction of over-controlling, of over-managing, of over-security system. And at the end of the life, we have differently but the same, that there are so many possibilities now to bring people beyond the threshold, assisted, and so, and this is not untypical, because these thresholds, they are in a way focal points. They open our view for what is a human being, coming in, going out. And I think this struggle on the gates is belonging also to a Michael time. In my personal approach, the feeling that these Michael times were always crisis times of mankind. Decisive times, and Michael is a leading spirit. I mean, he can't change, he's not allowed to change our situation, but he can support good impulses in difficult times. And a spirit of strength, Dr. Steiner said, is different from the other archangels and spirits of time, because he has this strong affinity to bring the impulses down to earth. It is unique for Michael to incarnate impulses, or to help to incarnate impulses. So from the spiritual height down to earth. So it has to do a lot to do with nativity, but also, or natality, but also with the new beginnings. Michael is fostering and supporting initiatives, impulses, as the Christmas conference was a new beginning on earth, natality, the mystery of natality. But Michael has also a relationship to death, because death is, from an anthroposophical point of view, of course, not only the end of life, but it's also penetrating the sensual world by the spirit. So if Michael is a spirit, Dr. Steiner explained, penetrating the material and seeing the spiritual behind. So a Michaelic natural science approach is to see the spirit in matter. Ernst Leers and his book about matter and spirit, it has to do with the Michaelic time. Also see a spirit birth in the dying of the material. So the mystery of birth and the dignity of birth and the dignity of death is that it is all the time dialectic. There is a birth element and a death element. So if we focus and concentrate or even meditate on birth and death, Michael as the guardian is always present. And Dr. Steiner said what we need is this Michael festival in the future as preparing a home place on earth for the spirit, to incarnate spirit on earth. But back to dignity of birth and death, and I want to go coming a little bit to the phenomena of a deeper understanding of birth and death and the dignity of these transitions. And of course, I have nothing to say. It is, in a way, anthroposophy who opened the eyes, not the speakers opened the eyes. It is enormous what we all owe to this spiritual teaching of anthroposophy. In a way, it can really open new perspectives, as we heard in the morning. And for me, it was always interesting that when Thomas of Aquinas quoted Aristotle, he never said, this is a quotation by Aristotle. He always said, so it has been made clear by the philosopher, by Aristotle. It has been made clear. So it was revealed by him. So opening the eyes, sicut partet per philosophum. It was shown. And in a way, this is the tremendous thing with anthroposophy, or with Steiner's presence, that he opened perspective, opened new sights also for birth and death, opened our own approach, that we think that this is not at all an absolute break. He learned us to see that we have this continuance of the individuality, and we also have a common world which is also an expression of the unborn, the living human beings, and the deceased, that they all belong together. Steiner once said in a very dramatic formulation that it's the task of anthroposophy to eliminate the abyss to the other world. We have an incredible abyss nowadays in the consciousness of, I would say, of all of us. It is not just the other ones. I mean, anthroposophy is building new bridges, but we are all born in the 20th century. And this means children of the abyss. This means being born in a culture where the abyss was erected. Some of us maybe were preserved by an anthroposophical family or by inner circumstances, but most of us had to undergo, have to suffer this abyss. And we can understand what Steiner means if he say it is belonging to the task of anthroposophy to eliminate the abyss. It is a strong formulation, and especially because he said it is the task of anthroposophy, not one of the, it is the task. So the major task. The common world, this is a very modern formulation. A common world, one earth. So now it's widely used in ecological, holistic approaches or modern concepts of health. One world, they say, but this one world, from a spiritual point of view, this is also, the world of the unborn and the world of the so-called deceased. One light shines in this common world. And it's one of our tasks to integrate those who are not physically there, no more or not yet. So what we see in anthroposophy is a new evaluation, I would say, of the existence on earth, the human being on earth, and the relationship to the gods. And this has to do with the theme of dignity. What is inflamed in us, Dr. Steiner once said, what is inflamed in us by the super sensible insights of anthroposophical spiritual science is love of man, which teaches us the value of man, which makes us feel human dignity. Interesting, there are a lot of definitions. What is anthroposophy for? And now saying that something is inflamed in human beings by these teachings. And what is inflamed primarily is love of man. This is the major intention. And this love, so in this quotation, but the love itself then is teaching something, the value of man. And this makes us feel human dignity. So there is a relation in between this loving compassion, this participation, this deep interest in the other one, and this deep interest in the other one, this nearness, opening the eyes for the value of every single human being beyond all differences in the world of becoming, and making us feel human dignity. So what is anthroposophy for? It is really important to see this priority Steiner once brought. And now going a little bit closer to the theme of birth and death. Metamorphosis of life, of love, Dr. Steiner. Metamorphosen der Liebe, he once called these transitions of birth and death. The dying and the becoming, it is undergoing a process of metamorphosis. And as I mentioned, as you all know, it is so interesting that the death in the one world is the birth in the other one. Maybe tonight in Novalis it will be expressed again, because it was one of these major themes of him, that they belong together, this dying in the one world and this becoming in the other one. Steiner also opened the eyes, let's say, with the birth, that it's not just a moment, but a becoming, the birth of the physical, the etheric, the astral, the I, stages of a progress. And also after death, it is not just done. After this moment, then there is a longer way. The members the layers of the constitution elements of our whole individuality are incorporated into cosmic structures, step by step. So we have an event character, a momentum, but also stages. And it has to do with the second panel also insofar that the heart organ is the most dramatic point of it. So in a way, the heart is the first functioning organ in the process of incarnation. This is what Aristotle once described first in the history of science, that the heart organization is the first organization functioning in the embryologic state. It is interesting, the heart formation, it is not really here. Our heart organ is shaped there. So outside and above the corpus, the little corpus of the embryo, and then we see that there is a descensus cordis, as they call it in embryology, in the Latin form, that the heart organ is really coming down and is then incorporated, starting outside, as the priest is standing from the older times on front of the altar with the sun. And the sun is then coming in the descensus cordis. And this heart organ then is the momentum of incarnation. When the heart starts to beat, this is the tremendous point, but also when it stops to beat. And Steiner said, every death of a human being is a heart death. Even if we die by an accident, an injury of the head, or a cancer of the limbs, he said, always it is the heart organ where the etheric body and the astral body and the eye are really distancing from the physical body, what we call death. So it is the organ of incarnation, excarnation, and Steiner opened the eyes, as I said, for these moments. So we are in the midst of the mysteries of what is a human being, and also in the midst of the mysteries of the dignity. But maybe a little bit more about this moment of incarnation. In the teaching of anthroposophy, Dr. Steiner showed that, or explained that we have those who incarnate, they have a kind of foresight for the coming biography. It is in the first 3 weeks after conception. Interesting, the first 3 weeks after conception, the eye of the coming child is still in the periphery. So it starts with the cells, the conception, but there is still an incarnation process. And in this incarnation process, the individuality has a kind of foresight for the biography and has to come to decisions to really plunge into this karmic biography. So there can also be a kind of a withdrawal at this point. The first 3 weeks, Dr. Steiner said, there is a decision has to be made. And then after the 3rd week, then the heart is starting to beat and the connection is made between the eye and the physical germ. I mean, it's all tiny at this time, but tremendous processes are going on. And the birth, the dignity of birth is also, I think, a little bit the knowledge about the placenta. I mean, the whole organ of the cosmic. Now we have a total underestimation in culture about what the older times called the bundle of living. The placenta, the lost half of human beings, is the book title of Wolfgang Schad, who died last year, about a book also about modern scientific insights in the dignity of the placenta and a deeper understanding for the old rituals for the placenta. They were destroyed later by Christian church because they said this is pagan customs. I mean, all these old rituals, they were then more or less forbidden. In older times, they knew this is the cosmic part, not only of the pregnancy, but also, yeah, in a way, this is part of the death in the cosmic. Very interesting. We have the birth on Earth, and on the other side, we have this death in the cosmic world. So in a way, they adored the placenta as knowing about the cosmic layers of a human being. So a new dignity of human being, dignity of birth, means also the dignity to perceive the importance of the world we are coming from. There is only a fragment, only a kind of rest of it in the placenta. And very interesting, as a mirrored phenomenon, the death element, we can say the dignity of the corpus. I mean, it is the same. There is the birth in the spiritual world, but this is not seen. If this would be seen, then it would be a festival for the good friends. What they see is the physical corpus. But in older times, they adored the physical corpus as well, because it's all inscribed in this physical body. What was the biography? That means what were individual impulses inscribed in the body. The whole body is a scripture, a kind of a Bible, an individual Bible. Inscribed is the life of the individual. So in a way, we have mirror phenomenons, and a new perception is needed for this, also for the importance of the body. Maybe I can follow this, because in a way, it belongs to the dignity of our physical body that it enables us the I consciousness as incarnated human beings, the process of being self-aware, the I consciousness, also in the sense of what we heard in the morning from this experience of being in the middle, the I in the middle of the soul, and also in inspiring the world. But this has as a condition the incarnation structure. The foundation stone meditation is a wonderful, a modern psalm about what is a human body being. I mean, it is really centered on the physical body, the limbs and the heart and the head. It is not only spiritual, it is physical. The dignity of an incarnated human being, not only the dignity of the soul, but the dignity of the physical body. This is one of the major steps that Steiner reopened the eyes for the dignity of the physical body. There is the whole dimension of dignity, that we are born on earth in physical situations. So a new estimation of the sensual world. Sometimes as anthroposophists, we are seen as spiritualists, or people who are mainly interested in soul and spirit. But in fact, Steiner opened the eyes for a new perspective of the physical body as, in a way, the chief work of the gods, the religion of the gods, the end of God's productivity, and in the sense of culmination. And it's very interesting that the process of birth, or the moment of birth, is the starting point or the deepening point of an incarnation. That means an awakening of the I consciousness in a physical structure. On the other side, if we die, we lose this option of self-awareness in the physical body. And because we lose this, we lose the I consciousness. And Steiner described in detail what this is mean to detach from the physical body. That means to give your I consciousness up in a way. This is not easy. It is not easy. It is not easy to die, not only because we have to say goodbye to the biography, to the relatives, to the friends, to our earthly existence, but also in a way to our I consciousness. And for me personally, it was the most horrifying point when I realized, when I was maybe 12 or 13, that we are mortal existences. So my shock was not that the time will end of being together, but together with myself. What does it mean to, in a way, to live with the knowledge that this I consciousness will fade away once upon a time, and not so far away, this once upon a time. It's interesting that the portal of death, it needs a lot of courage to go through, because really the main challenge is how to carry me in me. So this kind of self-surrender, and to deal with it. The surrender and the transition: into your hands I give myself, said Christ on the cross. Into your hands I give myself. That means the I consciousness, or the myself on this level, is no more in my hands. And this is, so we have the mirror from the I consciousness awaking, then in being born, and then lost at the end, but not for eternity, but the transition. So extremely interesting, the gate of birth and the gate of death. And also good to understand that we are not alone. The social community, the placenta is going, but the parents are there. It's a wonderful thought that in a way, as parents, we can't replace the cosmos. Where is the child from? We can't replace the envelope of the placenta are standing for this kind of surrounding. But we build a new surrounding, a social community, a new shell for the child. And if somebody is dying, Steiner said it is one of the most important tasks for the friends who stay here to carry the image of the one who is going, in a way replacing the I consciousness for a certain time. But he has to give himself up in this passage. But the friends can carry the image at this time until he can grasp a new I consciousness, and this takes some days. It is not for 10 years. It is, Steiner is saying, those who die, they came in a world of over-consciousness, and they have to grasp their own individuality in a realm of over-consciousness, and this takes some time. So in both gates, the social community is important. So they belong together. They really belong together in their polarity. And interesting maybe this as well, Steiner said this I consciousness is restored then by the awareness of the death body more and more. It's interesting that the individuality is going out of the body, but in front of. In a way, Dr. Steiner is saying that this physical body is a deep, deep experience for those who pass the threshold. And over years, the moment of dying or to leave the body behind is an important inner experience for those who pass the threshold. In a way, Dr. Steiner is saying confronting the physical body left behind, this is an essential element of regaining a new I consciousness, gaining and maintaining an ego or an I consciousness by visualizing the moment of death. For us on earth, some of us, the moment of death of the beloved other one was very, very difficult. But Steiner said, but you should never forget that for the one who passed, this moment is one of the most holy and most essential experiences in the next few years. Against the overabundance of consciousness, of world thoughts, the body is a counterpart. Steiner said a kind of a will star for those who pass the threshold, an object of contemplation. An object of contemplation. So the I consciousness for the newborn child in incarnating more and more and excarnating again the body, the dignity of the body is very important for this deeper knowledge. Maybe this is enough for an approach to the dignity of birth and death from the point of view of anthroposophy. Of course, I only wanted to underline some spiritual elements. I think we have other approaches to birth and death where we can see there is what we can see as a dignity as well, but these are some spiritual lights. And they have to do, what I said, I think, with the Michaelmas time in which we live. Michael, who guides us to the future, that it may become presence. It's one description of Dr. Steiner saying, Michael is a spirit who guides the future, that it may become presence. So in a way, the transition of time, where the future is present in the presence as a germ. We heard yesterday in the presentation, also the meditative presentation, we heard about this Samenkorn meditation, the presence of the future and birth and death. They have also this germ aspect. And it's so important that anthroposophy brought a new light on it, a heavenly light in the earthly existence, heavenly light in earthly light, as it is called in the Michaelmas epistle of the Christian community, preparing the human heart for light. So the human heart is this destiny organ, and I think it is so essential for understanding the Christmas conference that is so centered to the heart, but not as a sentimental organ, but as a destiny organ of incarnation and excarnation of life. Yes, Michael brought this new spiritual light on what is a biography, what is birth and death. Franz Kafka once wrote in his diary, not everyone can see the truth, but be the truth. We are not all initiates, but we can try to live initiation or this new light. And I think, or we thought in the general section, that it's good to make such a conference at the Goetheanum, and now we brought some little contributions to Manitoba here. It's good to have such a new approach to the dignity of human beings, and to focus also on birth and death. In our time, if we think of all the refugees, of all those who die in the Mittelmeer or wherever, so many also ways of dying in a unworthy, or how to say, from an outer aspect, it is not at all a dignity of death. And also there are circumstances of being born also in a time of escape, or that as anthroposophists we have the task. We can't change the world history or the refugee streams, but to focus on what we have to bring also, what we have to try to establish, at least on the level of consciousness. But sometimes, as I told you from this conference at the Goetheanum, suddenly it's opening a gate, and we found an economic support for an initiative in the favela, in this rich, quite rich country of Switzerland. But it was in the conference, as I mentioned, where we tried to, in a way, concentrate on the need of a deeper understanding of birth and death, and it helped to bring life. So Hölderlin once said, those who think deepest, they love life. Wer das Tiefste gedacht, liebt das Lebendigste. So the deepest thoughts, they end up in a new consecration of life. And also the deceased, Steiner is saying, they have an enormous respect for life on earth and in general. So yeah, that's what I wanted to contribute to this working group today, dignity of man. And we decided to start with dignity of birth and death, and in the afternoon then we will hear and share more aspects about a new understanding of dignity of man in this 20th, 21st century. So thank you first for your attention in listening.